Hey guys, and welcome to another tutorial for JcInventory. My name's Jack, and today we're going to be having an in-depth look on attributes. So for this example, I've set up a charges system, and this could be used for, say, eating a pie or a pizza in 8 sections, or it could be used for tracking ammo. So we have a look at the rifle here, and I equip it, and I've just got the text here, charges 30 of 30. If I click X, you'll see that that goes down. So that could be used for tracking ammo inside the weapon. If we have a look at that, we open up the player inventory and we look at the equipment slots. The third one is the primary slot. Come down to attributes and you can see charges 23. And I've also got a key here that increases the weight by 1. We're going to be looking at how to increase the weight for this example, but it is the same for the charges. The weight's just a slightly cleaner example because the charges has a clamp on it that stops max charges. We're going to be just doing the most simple manipulation of attributes. Okay. So let's have a look at how I've set that up. Here you see I've got my X and Z keys. We're going to be looking at the Z key. The first thing I do is I get the details of a slot, so the primary slot. This will grab the first one. If I had 2 primary slots, it would only grab one of them. But if you are using the same setup as me, this will work quite nicely. From there, I'm breaking the equipment slot and only getting the item data. Then I'm getting the attributes, and finally I'm getting the weight. Then I'm adding 1 to it, and I'm calling a function I made in my function JcInventory library called setWeight. So let's just have a quick look at that function. First thing to note here is that item data, and this is a very good way, I think, to set attributes in a very clean manner. When you're dealing with structs within structs, all within an array, it can get quite confusing in Blueprint as opposed to code because of its visual nature. It just kind of spaghettis out. But this is how I've done it and how I like working. So I've passed item data as a reference. That means at the end here, when I set the members in JC item data struct, it's going to affect the variable that we plugged in to that item data. So in the case of the JC character, it's affecting this variable here. So then when I grab it again and set the equipment slot by index, it's going to be the modified item data from this function. You could also return a variable here, item data, and plug it from there into there if you wanted to, just by sort of making a return node and plugging that into there. But this works. So what we do here with our struct is we get the attributes and we save them. It's important that we make a local reference to it because we need to use that to plug into here. And we set the members in this temporary attributes. And we're only changing weight, so we change the weight of it. Then we go ahead and set the members of the item data struct and with our new temp members. So it will replace all the attributes, but really we're just copying the attributes from that item data and only changing one variable. And we come back to here and it's set. Then we call the set equipment slot by index. This is how you would equip a weapon. It's called by the UI. It's called by, whenever we need to change out a slot. Never ever just, set these like this, like directly. The reason it is exposed is for debugging purposes. Mostly you should be using this get equipments node, or just, you can get it directly, but don't ever set to it directly. You'll have problems because what this function does, and I've just added a boolean here, and I'll show you what that does in a minute. What this function does is it does a bit more than just set the array element. It also tells the inventory to update, and it calls the interface on our character. So if we need to, we can, change the weapon or do whatever else. I added a bool into this interface because I felt like it might be nice to have only a value changed. And all that does is, if we go back to our character, so when we set the equipment slot, this command's going to be activated on our player because something has changed. And here, instead of, changing our weapon each time we change the weight or whatever, I just plugged in a bool into this function that said, oh, we only changed the value, don't update everything, but if we need to change the weight to see if the player's encumbered or if we're checking for ammunition, well, we do want that to update. I could have really, I guess, just compared the class and see if the class had changed. It was just a quick modification for the system for how I'm implementing it. So I want to talk more broadly about attributes now. And I'll go ahead and open up that rifle. So in the item data, I could have, I guess, put things like charges and max charges inside the item data struct. The reason I didn't do that is that items are persistent if they're in the attribute section. Let me give you a demo of that. So I pick up the rifle, and at the moment, it's going to have 30 charges. I'm going to equip it and deduct a few charges, and then I'm going to drag it into the world. Now, this resets back all of its data to all these settings here. But what's not reset, what's carried with it when it's dropped into the world, is any of the attributes it's had. So its unique name, its amount of charges, its max charges, its value and weight, and anything that you add there for that matter. So this is a new BP item, but if I go and select it, and we open the attributes, we can see that its charges have remained the same. So it's got 21 charges. And if I pick that up and equip it again, you can see 21 charges. I can go ahead and deduct that. That's why you use attributes. That's why they're very useful. If you do have problems with that, let's just have a look at the code. If I can find my JcInventory item. At begin play, basically we see if replace attributes, and that's on spawn of these items, replace attributes gets set by whatever attributes they used to have from the item data. So if we have attributes to replace from the default attributes that come from the item class, basically we replace them. If you're having problems here, it's because when you add attributes, you've also got to handle the structs. Unreal doesn't know how to deal with structs. It doesn't know if it's valid or whatever else. So we have a look at attributes as set. Now this has changed recently. So if you're in an older version of JcInventory, you might see that it's just comparing each value in the attributes section to see if they're empty. Instead, this just calls the compare attributes command and compares it against a empty attribute, which is just a lot cleaner. And then in our compare attribute, it does exactly that. So we're just checking from attribute A and attribute B, and if they're equal, and obviously they all have to be equal for that to be the same. And here we check that the keys are fine. It's a little bit more complex, but because it's an array, but more or less, this is all that there is to it. So when you make a new attribute, you should really open your JcInventory library and open up your compare attributes and make the changes you need to make here in order for this compare attributes. So if you can compare attributes together and make sure that they're different or whatever logic is important, and that just gets returned as out results. So we can see here, if any of these fail, out results set to true. And So that's one gotcha, I suppose, with attributes that you should really update when you make them. Um, and that pretty much concludes attributes. So one good strategy for debugging was I said that we could change the weight. Obviously, I don't have a dialog for that. But if we open this, we can see the weight here. If I click Z, oops, would help equip the weapon. I click Z and there we go. So you can always open up your JC player inventory and actually have a look at the guts of, your items in these struct views rather than relying on UI. I'll quickly show you how I implemented those widget changes in the JC user interface. I just added a text box to the vertical box inside the examination window. So this is the examination window. And I added the change box and then show examine window from the item data. I'm getting the charges and the max charges and I'm appending them together, say charges, etc., etc. And I only display that if they have more than one charge. That's all that is. Okay. Thank you very much. I hope that was useful. If you have any questions, ask on the